here. Turn off your cell phones if you would, please. And I was looking through just an envelope yesterday, and I got these pictures of John and Deb had a very interesting party a few years ago. Who remembers that party over at their house? God, it was a good party. Yeah, oh my gosh, yes. And I see I got Ralph and Rodger in this one here, and other stars, other people who are here today. Take a look. And Ralph, oh my God. How you doing, Ralph? I remember when the Iraq, I'm just going to tell quickly, the Iraq War broke out, and Ralph and Ingrid decided to get some books, and Martha and Jerry decided to get books over there to Iraq, and all these yahoos were coming by. Why are you bothering with that? It's going to be over in 2 weeks, and same old stories. Yeah, like COVID, yeah. And, you know, so we got 8,000 of them from the community. It was very, and this is where they were here. The books were here somewhere, I don't know. Paperbacks, they had to be 5,000? Okay, 5,000, yeah. In the book it'll say 8,000. And then it was time to box them up, you know, and oh my God, what a job. And I probably told this story before, but Ralph showed up with a bunch of guys from World War II. And this was whatever, 2000. And I just took one look, I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm going book shopping around town. You know, I can't. This is going to take a year. And then as I was leaving, Ingrid showed up. And she had a tin of chocolate brownies. And those old boys got wired up on the chocolate brownies. And I came back, about an hour and a half later, it was done. So,
But you had to take it to the post office.
yeah, yeah.
And Anita Sullivan was with us too.
What, was Anita a part of it?
Anita Sullivan was part of that too.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yes, she is. Yeah, that was a glorious moment. You know, we do things like that. Today we're honoring Ralph. And I'm just here to let you know there's going to be cake. There's going to be, we've got a lot of bottles of wine. So when the reading's done, there's going to be a little party. We might, you know. And otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Ingrid here. Let's bring her Ingrid up to the stage. How about a little...
Thank you, Scott. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It's just such a privilege and a joy and an honor to be able to celebrate the 100th birthday of my late husband, Ralph Salisbury, whom I think just about everybody knows or knew. And it would have been yesterday, was actually his birthday, but there was a conflict because one of his friends, colleagues, a wonderful human being, retired Professor Emeritus George Wicks, had his memorial service yesterday, and we did not want to take away or split the audience, so we moved this to today. So thank you all for being here, and those of you who come from afar, we are most grateful. Kim Stafford is here from Portland. Mark Thalman is here from Forest Grove. Barbara Drake is here from Yamhill. And the rest of you, I believe, are local. It's just wonderful to have you here. I want to thank many people without whom this would not have happened. Primarily my daughter, Martina Salisbury, who's also going to be speaking after me, and reading one of her father's poems and one of her own. And we have a surprise today that was not announced yesterday, or all the missives that have been going out, that Joan Dobbie is able to join us. And she originally thought she'd be out of town, and so she didn't get on the program, and she arrived back in town this week, and hooray, we can add her, since she was also one of Ralph's former students, as are all the people who are going to be reading. And I want to also say that my daughter Martina had this idea long ago, like last fall, and she brought me along with it, and she was instrumental in making so many arrangements and doing the publicity, the programs. As a designer, she made those beautiful posters and the program which you have in your hand. And so I'm really grateful, and I'm grateful to all of the readers who put up with a bunch of emails over the past several months. Thank you for that, and thank you for being here. I want to also acknowledge the presence of Ralph's son, Jeff Salisbury, and his two sons, Travis and Connor, and I'm going to ask them to stand up so you can see who they are. And they knew in advance this was going to happen. That's Jeff. Next to Jeff is Travis, and next to Travis is Connor. And they had a lot to do with who Ralph is as well, and was. So I also want to thank Rodger Moody, editor of Silverfish Review Press, who's going to be one of our readers and was one of Ralph's students. I want to thank him for his help in planning this program, and especially for sending out more than one email blast. I'm sure you got those. I'm not sure, but I think many of you got those. Thank you for Rodger, thank you for doing that. I also want to thank him for his lifelong devotion to Ralph's work, including Silverfish Review Press's publication of Ralph's new and selected poems, Light from a Bullet Hole, which is for sale. Am I correct, Rodger?
Yes.
Yeah, it's at the back of the room. It's for sale along with other books. There are books by other readers for sale, and we're asking that you handle those sales through the desk at Tsunami. And also, I'm able to make the very happy announcement, thank you to Rodger, that he has, and Silverfish Review Press, has accepted Ralph's final manuscript of poems, which he put together just about the month before he died, titled Living in the Mouth. So you can look forward to that coming up. And a very, very few more housekeeping details. The bio notes for each reader, as you probably have noticed, are in your program, so you won't need to, we won't need to make introductions before each person comes up. The last reader will just introduce the next one. And at the very end, after Ken Zimmerman's presentation, and you'll notice that his name starts with a Z, we're going in alphabetical order, we're asking that you remain in your seats because we will have a few volunteers pouring trays of small glasses of Prosecco and sparkling water for those who prefer not to imbibe. And we'll ask that you remain seated at that time. And Scott has kindly agreed to come up and lead us in a toast to wish Ralph a happy birthday. We can all stand, raise our glasses, and cheer. And afterwards, the German chocolate cake will be ready for you to enjoy. And please feel free to socialize, look at books, buy books. Some of the proceeds are going to be going to Tsunami because we are here at the generosity of Scott Landfield and his bookstore. We are going to support it. So please, everybody, if you can, don't leave without a book. All right. I'm going to say a few words and then pass the mic to Martina, but I want to give a bit of a framework to this reading. And I woke this morning, like many of you, with a dual awareness, the beauty of this day, the beauty of our landscape, of our community, with gratitude and happy expectation of this gathering. And also the crushing awareness of what's happening around us. The daily news of horror and grief, with a brand new one came across yesterday. The shooting of Alex Pretty in Minneapolis. So it's a push and pull today for us, and for many of us every single day recently, trying to keep our hearts and our minds in balance and to keep our wish to protest and also to keep hope and affirmation alive, to try to balance that. And then I remembered the words of Pablo Picasso, which I'll read. Artists who live and work with spiritual values cannot and should not remain indifferent to a conflict in which the highest values of humanity and civilization are at stake. And I know that Ralph would join me in applauding all poets who have been voicing their fury, their fears, their grief. I'm hoping you're seeing some of these coming across social media or in email blasts or whatever. Speaking truth to power, raging, being the voices for everyone of us filled with grief and dismay. He would agree their voices are essential agents, essential pillars in strengthening our own resolve, in validating our own perceptions, and in putting us in community with one another. It's one of the most important things we can be doing as community with one another, and thank you for, this is community. Thank you. And here in his own words, written in the last years of his life. Though I have lived and worked among the intelligentsia of many nations, which he did, my writing comes from being a questing, mixed race, working class individual in a violent world. My work is offered to the spirit of human goodness, which unites all people in the eternal struggle against evil, a struggle to prevail against global extinction. He would also like the words of Oregon poet Phyllis McGinley, the early 20th century Oregon poet who won a Pulitzer Prize and is really relatively unknown, who said, in times of unrest and fear, it is perhaps the writer's duty to celebrate, to single out some values we can cherish, to talk about some of the few warm things we know in a cold world. To which I would also add that Ralph would agree with Anne Lamott. Laughter is carbonated holiness. So let us laugh some today, and let us mourn some today, and let us be together in our attempt to balance protest and affirmation, and appreciate the poetry that Ralph so beautifully gave us over so many years, 11 books of poems, 3 books of short stories, a prize-winning memoir. He would also say, and I'll conclude on this, that he would say with great respect, we gather here today on the unceded homelands of the ancestral Chidlan people of the Kalapuya, whose descendants are citizens of the descendants are now citizens of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians. So with our words and our actions, we honor their enduring care for this land and their living cultures. And we now turn to celebrating the life and work of Ralph Salisbury, born in 1926, died in 2017. And I turn this over to Martina, and she will say a few more words, and then she'll turn it over to Joan Dobbie. Thank you.
Hi. It's wonderful to be here today, and I hope you can hear me okay. You hear me?
Yeah, good.
I'm so grateful for this moment and to be in this room with all of you and to be celebrating my dad and poetry. I never realized when I was growing up how lucky I was to have 2 poets as parents. at the time, I thought it was a little annoying, being dragged to poetry readings, and which now I'm like, that was kind of great. I was asked often if when I grew up I was going to be a poet, and I think I always said no, of course not. And I secretly loved poetry, but I didn't want to become my parents because nobody wants to be their parents. And so I forged a creative path that went more in a visual way. I loved photography, I loved visual art. I ended up studying design and designing books and magazines and working sort of with images, but always loved writing and always loved working with words and was always secretly writing. And it wasn't until maybe 15 years ago that I started writing and publishing and reading my own work, and was glad that my dad was still around when that was starting. And the last time that he was published in a journal, I had a poem in the same journal too, and so in 2017 I was really happy. And we posed with covers of the book. Maintenant, it's a great neo-Dadaist journal that comes out every year. And I won't keep you guys long because I know there's a lot of people reading today. I just wanted to share two things. One is that the poem I'm going to read is Like the Sun in Storm. That's my dad's title poem from his last collection. Actually I designed the cover of that, I just remembered that. And I designed a broadside with the poem that there's copies for everyone here if you would like to take one. There's also envelopes to protect them. These were printed by an amazing letterpress printer in Portland who I met thanks to Kim Stafford, who introduced me to someone who introduced me to Bernie Smith, who very graciously, generously, kindly, having never met me before or ever heard of my dad before, offered to print these 100 broadsides, hand set with metal type for free, which is incredibly generous, and I'm really grateful to him. And so please take one, and yeah, hit him up if you need something, but ideally pay him if you need broadsides. So I'll read the poem that's on the broadside, Like the Sun in Storm. Just a backstory to this poem, maybe some of you know this. It's one of my favorites. It's about, it refers to my dad's first day of school. He started school, first grade, at age 4, and was really excited to start school, partly because he saw the kids across the road playing in the schoolyard. And so he went across the road and when he started school formally, and when all the kids went inside the one-room schoolhouse to go to class, he didn't want to go inside, he wanted to keep playing. So he hid in a lilac bush. So that's what the poem is about. Like the Sun in Storm. There was a place where the big kids let me hide, the space too small for any of them, behind a white lilac and one like the sun in storm, or the blood of a butchered pig, darkened by earth. And when the game was done and everyone else had got caught, I stayed and still stay in the nest of the big ones' willingness to let me become the pretend child of all of them. And the sense that the world, despite some slaps and the occasional crunch of knuckles against teeth, and my brother being sent to war, could be really good. And I'm going to read one more poem, and this was the first poem that I wrote after my dad died. And when he was in the hospital, one of the things he said to me that's always stayed with me is that we are alike. And I think we were. And so this is a poem from my dad. We are alike, you said. I think you're right. Though I am breathing dust and you have become smoke on Douglas fir needles and moss in the feathers of birds that find my path. You return in clouds over Brooklyn buttermilk sky, and my throat fills with the weight of a blue whale. 40 years forgotten in a bathtub tide pool. I was not struck by lightning, never hid in lilac sun and storm. Nobody shot at my small feet, scattering scars on a floor patched with tobacco tins. but with dark earth under my fingernails, I scrawl my dreams illegible onto scraps of bread in the morning, and hold your voice between my teeth. It tastes like salt and light, like ocean air. So thank you all for being here. Joan Dobbie, you are up. Thank you, guys.
Hi, can you hear me well? Can you hear me well? Yeah. Okay, good. I'm holding up a picture that I took of Ralph at his 90th birthday party. And if ever you want a copy of this picture, you can email me and I will send it to you. So, Ralph was my teacher, and I have a bunch of his books, and he gave me books so often. I just pulled this one out and went through it, and I'm reading from Rainbows of Stone, which was a literary arts finalist for the Oregon Book Award. And he was a hunter, and he loved life, and he loved animals, and he loved humans. This book is called Oil Spill Spreading. I think it's about Alaska, but now we could call it future Greenland, hopefully not. Oil spill spreading. Confusing first, I'm a killer, a carnivore, and that I shot at creatures of my own shape, attacking my home in a night as black as the sun. Drowning in oil spilled in Alaska, I speak of elephants, which words in the world's least likely to be extinct language protect. Starting the month of my birth. Next year the slaughter to be greater, like oil put under pressure, till then months piled on centuries of wasting mountains of meat on a starving continent. One can understand a neighbor's missiles frightening another of self-preservation. However, our fellow mammal, the largest alive on land, means of protection lures murderers as eons under stone animals and plants transformed to black gold, lured whites to steal the American Siberia, imprisoning Indians, where oil company guns won Dad's union's election. 3 sons soldiered for capitalism, but one of them, Earth hurtling toward extinction, tries to power survival with sounds derived from voices of centuries of tons of flesh, ink black as fossil blood on a white Alaskan shore, in danger of being forever the night of nuclear winter. I'm going to read one more by Ralph. And I'll read this one. For a prairie chicken, now extinct. Its shape somewhat like a bullet, my trigger finger, which squeezed so many living shapes into dinner plates, now's a worm curled around the stem, my scribbled roots, petals, invisible wings, of a prairie chicken, that almost flightless, easily killed bird, the last mouthful of its meat may be mine, who flew in a bomber like the one which put a small Japanese city into history. So he loved all of life, he loved humanity. And I'm going to read one poem of my own that I wrote for him just last night, so, forgive that. But I was so honored to have been invited to his 90th birthday party. It meant a lot. And he was my teacher. Poem for Ralph on his 100th birthday. I was there at your 90th. Really, it was a marvelous party, all of us celebrating. Not that you'd gotten so old, but that you'd ripened so sweetly under your bright golden crown. And what fun we were having, reading our limericks, feasting in your honor, devouring our memories. I've lost all the pictures I took. It seems my computer got hungry, and only just this one survived. And you in our minds and our hearts, as they say. I remember my own 40th birthday, me new to Eugene. I was giving a reading, and you came, and Ingrid came with you, and I'd applied, you see, to the U of O creative writing department under you, and my reading didn't go all that well. I thought I was too nervous. I didn't like the poems I chose. I didn't read them well. I was scared stiff of turning 40, but then I got in anyway. And you and John and Claudia carried me through to where I'm now here at your 100th, and me, no spring chicken, but with 1 or 2 poems under my belt, nonetheless, that just might outlive me. I thank you, Ralph, for your sharp, polished work over the decades and the gift of your smile over so many years. And I now introduce Barbara Drake, whose name is just 1 or 2 or a few letters after mine. Welcome, Barbara.
I wonder if I'm the oldest person here that was one of Ralph's students. It's possible, because I was an undergraduate at University of Oregon, and Ralph, I came in 1950, is it 57? Yeah. And Ralph appeared in it's not working, or I'm not, okay. So my teachers were Sylvan Karchmer and Jim Hall. And in 1960, Ralph appeared. And then soon after that, Jim Hall went to California. He had started the MFA here, and then went to Irvine to start it there when that was new in California. Now, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I remember with Ralph, when I first took classes from him, Earl Burney came. Do you know who Earl Burney was? Canadian poet, very wonderful man. And he came as a visiting writer, and Ralph was here. And we had classes in a coffee shop that I can't remember what it was called.
New World?
Huh?
New World? New World Coffee Shop?
We had to go off campus and have the class in a coffee shop and so on. So that felt good to me, sort of getting off and being, sort of getting out of some of the academic steps. And so we also sometimes came to people's houses, and my husband and I at the time lived in an old house at 14th and Alder that was torn down soon. And we had to go to Europe because the house was torn down. But, and it's true. But Ralph and Earl Burney would take the class up to our top floor, and we would sit around like on boxes and things and read, writing, and it felt like it was very good. I remember Ralph sitting on a little fruit box, reading, not on the couch, not on the floor, but on a little thing like that, squatting there and reading his poems, and all of us reading poems. So it was the beginning of the MFA period, and I don't remember when it actually became an MFA, but I was in the very first classes of those. And it was wonderful, because when I graduated and started graduate school for a year, it was, I was in the PhD program, and we had a class in which we had to memorize about 350 titles of academic journals. And I thought, this is what I'm doing? This isn't fun. It was literally, this is the, such and such, and it does this, and it does that. Now this is that, this is that. And I didn't do well in it. What was his name? Kester?
Svensson.
Huh?
Kester Svensson.
Kester Svensson, right. And so suddenly the MFA appeared. And I thought,
Ralph's doing.
what?
That was Ralph's doing. He created that.
Yeah, but he had been brought Jim Hall was wanting to have it, yeah, and then went to Irvine. So it was all beginning and it was wonderful and so on. So Ralph was always important in my life, and when I lived away from here, my husband and I would certainly come, and Ingrid and Ralph would give us a place to sleep before we got beyond where we were going and so on. So, and they visited us in Michigan, and I have lots of pictures of Ralph and Ingrid and Ralph in different times. So it's really a wonderful history to think about him and his work and the meaning that he was to me. So I will read a couple of his poems and then just read one of mine. And this one is in, I love these old books, but in Rainbows of Stone. But I put it on paper so I can see it better. If anyone does, my wife, who knows me, if anyone does, I'm telling her more than I know, my hope that it may be so this time, this rhyme, as reassuring as the next heartbeat, my tongue trying to make all okay, my death, a sequence in centuries of occurrences, a perspective that I was almost killed younger than my daughter is now, her mother grieving for when I'll be gone. I try to reassure, syllables, tears between whiskers, salt on my tongue, preserves of meat, a blessing that feet can feel carpet, arms a shape of warmth, as familiar as hope, my grave only the door to strangers so far. Now, it's a complicated poem, and probably you should look back at it and read it more than once, but I hope that was remind you of Ralph and bring him close to you. And another one that I don't know why I picked this, but it's interesting to me, and maybe thinking about the world right now and all the terrible things that are going on. And the title is, and this is in Going to the Water, German-French Soldier, a Conversation Remembered. I am a Nazi, he tells me, his English not bad, his pale length as unscarred as the dark bodies of his Parisian wife and their small sons, pounding sand into forts and forts into sand on this beach, which Mistral has chilled for all of his leave, he calls parole, ending this first fair day. I am captured near Marseille. I am 15. My family do not write. Your bombs, hungry. I joined the French Foreign Legion, Algeria, then Vietnam. The things I'd done, I don't want to think about them. I speak good, huh? Your soldiers taught me. And when my time is done, in the army, that is, I go into exports. Auf Wiedersehen. Au revoir. So long. You arrive in sun and are maybe more lucky than me. That connection with another person, another country, another war. So I was thinking of reading a poem, one of my first poems that I published when I was an undergraduate, working with Ralph. But I don't think I will read that one. I think I'm going to read one that is unpublished and new. So maybe it's a little rough, it's just recent, that relates, I think, to the world that is going on and very troubling. and the title is Sunday Morning News. Again, today the world is crazy, full of violence and threatening words. No, not the world. It's the newspapers are crazy. Headlines screaming. Or no, not the newspapers, the people whose stories the papers tell. Are humans the crazy ones? I look out the window, see our cats pursuing a mouse or two, but mainly just sniffing, enjoying the morning grass and the trees that invite climbing. How beautiful at the door to see our black and white dogs stretch out, observe the activity and yawn at leisure. Beyond the porch, I see the chickens clawing dirt, making a little mess on the sidewalk, eating scattered seeds and insects, of which there are countless varieties. Do different insects taste differently to the chickens? Are chickens gourmets of insects? And do even the insects enjoy their morning, their repast, their socializing? Now I see 3 deer coming out of the woods, exploring the vineyard, leaping over the fence as if the fence were nothing. The deer's eyes are beautiful, so dark and wary. It is their business to come out of the woods, to leap over fences, to feed and be wary. I see the acorn woodpeckers pecking, walking up the trunks of the oak trees, smartly anticipating the future by storing acorns in the wooden phone pole. Alas, in the end, it appears human beings with their loud mouths, their vulnerable bodies and fancy adornment, they're strutting and fumbling and turning on each other are the crazy ones. It appears to be so. It must be so. Sorry, not to be optimistic, but... Whoops. Alphabetically, who's next? I don't have to do that. Oh, you're good.
Hi, I'm Cecelia Hagen. Next. I moved here from Boston, where I'd been for a few months in the 70s, and I didn't know anybody. I came out by myself, but I moved here for the MFA program, which I didn't realize was so new. I mean, 3 years, a long time when you're 21, I guess. But Ralph, he welcomed me so graciously. He just had this way of accepting everything, and I would go to his office with my poems, and he would read them out loud, and I wouldn't say he critiqued them, but he'd often say something like, "Oh, I wish I'd thought of that." Like I remember I remember this one, I had a line was, "A new leaf curls out of a plant," and he's like, "Wow, I wish I'd thought of that." I mean, it's so simple, but I think that's good when you're learning and a student. In the workshop, which sometimes meant I had this weird living room in my house that had all these levels covered with shag carpet. Do you remember that? I mean, so it could fit a lot of people. He would be the last to speak about somebody's poem, if I'm remembering correctly. And so he'd listen to us, and I really felt he listened to us kind of working our way through the student's poem. And I appreciated that, and then he'd say stuff that was so insightful. And then since I stuck around Eugene and he lived in Eugene, I've run into him often enough. He and Ingrid are just, and he always seemed like so thrilled to see me, which is nice. He'd be like, "Oh, Cecelia," like I was a piece of gold. So I think that was just a really great quality of Ralph's, that to be pleased with so much and to really love the world, just love the world, love life. Oh, and one little story, I don't know if it's appropriate. He told me once, I think, when I was discussing stuff with him in his office, that he was on the beach at Carmel, and he had taken his jacket off and left it on a piece of driftwood, and a dog had peed on it. and somebody said, "Oh, don't you want to kick that dog?" And he's like, "No, that dog probably knew that jacket needed to be peed on." And that was really Ralph. It was like just accepting, he was very zen before that was a thing. The two poems I'm going to read of Ralph's are both kind of short. One is called Long and Longer. It doesn't even, it's short. It doesn't even get away, the big fish, but year after year of snows melting and plunging toward ocean, it swims deep and deeper as I cast, and casts into depths among shadows, a shadow I see always, and always downstream from my long and longer as the day grows shorter. Oh my. So it kind of, presages the shortness of life. And this one is called Thanks You. You go with some sadness, that's true, but the stones of the stream go also, seeking, your feet say, stone's stairway home beneath ocean as blue as the glittering shadow of God, knowing by this time no foot sinks through air, its shaft of warmth alone. For always there are car seats encouraging lovers, airlines uniting the unlikeliest would-be angels, wheelchairs bearing mortar to an office building's awkward adolescence, and even the sun under its terrible burden of vacuum. Thanks you for being someone for it to lean upon going down. Nice. And so I decided to read a poem from my MFA thesis, which I arranged alphabetically by title. I don't know, I just, that's how I worked with them, and then that's how I put it together. But this one was, I couldn't find my thesis, but this was in a little magazine. And it's called At the Outer Banks, North Carolina, which is where I would hang out. It's been long since I've seen Mary in her black swimsuit jump into waves, her hair dried in wild lengths of rope while we combed the beach for the stranded offerings of storms. We spread our green blanket between dunes, and orange juice dripped from my hands onto sand as fine as salt, as fine as sugar. Something in the peelings etched my fingertips in white. Because of your pH, she said. Wind lured the smoke from her mouth and made her cigarette shorten. She bent her head over a shell and named the deep spot indigo, touching the oyster's core. At a pier cafe, we pumped quarters into the tabletop jukebox. Mary sang songs from the city while the regular customers stared over plates of soft-shelled crab. We were girls, and we saw no limits to what we could make of ourselves. We had coolness and sweet disdain for those who lived by division and the limits of love or fear. We pulled the car over where tourists posed for pictures beside a sign, Kitty Hawk, where two stubborn brothers made do without feathers and flew. Draping towels across our shoulders, we transformed our shadows. We climbed. Next is Rodger Moody. Monsieur Moody.
I came here in '74 to finish my undergraduate degree, and in '76 I began the MFA program with Ralph Salisbury. I remember the first time I saw him, that first term for private conference, I had 2 or 3 rough drafts. One of them was just, I filled the whole page with memories of my mother's parents' farm. And so the page was full. And after I read it and he read it aloud, he circled about 30 words in the middle and said, work on this. And that might be an experience that's familiar to some of you that studied with Ralph. He sometimes would, he's a minimalist, would sometimes pare things down with And he also said, try tercets with this little that I've circled and short lines. And it was very useful. I did that, and actually, it's not a very good poem, I have to say, but I did publish it in a magazine, Poetry Now. You might remember that from the 70s. One other thing I wanted to say before I read a couple of his poems, and one of mine, is he said something in a workshop that I always remembered and used. He said that if you can't make sense, make music. Which I think that was, well, very helpful. This the first poem I'm going to read is called An Immortality. I'm sorry. On poem and on stone, Sir Walter Raleigh and his planned, I'm sorry, I'm having some trouble seeing, his plumed hat portrait graced an orange can, hammered as flat as an ornate cloak, spread to keep mud from a queen's delicate feet. The tobacco tin nailed for rats to blunt a mouthful of chiseled against an insulting mother's scrubbed pantry floor. The conqueror courtiers frown, rustled as brown as pipefuls, which father puffed into Cherokee prayers. Mom shelved Ireland's loaves in churchyard rows, as comforting as coincidence, while child after child our Indian lineage paled, milk teeth carrying on crust, milk teeth carving on crust, a family story enduring as page, as stone, as rust. I think my glasses need to be a little bit stronger because I'm having trouble seeing some of the words. Oh, okay. Yeah. And, oh boy. Where's the poem? The next poem is a title poem from his new and selected that was published a few years ago in 2008, Light from a Bullet Hole. See if I can get the light better for me. She tells you I am her baby, twisting on shattered glass, wind ghost moaning in, turning my screams to steam, turning the walls, bullets, holes, light into a icicle, witched into yellow pencil with which I write what she cannot tell. But I am her baby no longer. Our family's enemies shot, which was meant for somebody's older, now striking someone so old. The world itself is his child, twisting in broken breath. It is a human death, the telephone wires tell my ear, half deafened by bomber motors, but still able to hear the pleading of those who were burning. And milk from my mother's nipple is light from a bullet hole as I twist again and again in diapers frozen to shattered ice, and offer, while blizzard rolled, seraphim sing, Mother, take from a thorn of light the flesh that was torn from you, and wear it warm in the night. I'm going to read a poem of mine that is older, and it's a Midwestern poem. I could be wrong. Someone has to do the dirty dishes. It's not like I was asked to do something useless. Every time a used cup appears on the counter, or a knife with a pad of peanut butter is left in the sink, I know someone is thinking of me. What could be better than this? It's not as if I were being drafted. I could be a prisoner falsely accused of an unimaginable crime. Life is almost too easy here. I could be wrong. It hasn't rained in weeks. Things at a distance seem to be shifting. If you look, you can see the waves of heat lifting off the fields. Thank you for being kind to my awkward reading. Frank Rossini is under the weather, and he can't read. He was supposed to be next. Ingrid has asked me to read for him, and that's what I'll do. So the first poem is from Light from a Bullet Hole. It's To My Heart, an emancipation proclamation. It has a lovely quote from Franz Kafka. Art is the axe to break the frozen sea within us. Old slave, blind pumper at the well, one brother already dead, you kept me alive through hunger and fever to chop ice and save cattle from thirst. Their milk sustaining my and thus my children's children's destinies. No wonder if after all these years you threaten the ultimate revolt, and I can only say gratefully that, known truly by those understanding your age to be the fertility dance, drumbeat of poetry, you endure so far, as does, despite stupidity and greed, our world. And this poem is a death song, my own. When I die, time still be still, the same for all who loved me, and for all my climb to the great spirit in the sky will seem no further hurtling of the stars, no rocket shot beyond the moon, but only toss of pebble into pond, those I would kiss, joke with, cuddle, or try again to kill, beautifully shadowed ripples filled with sun, a fine, faint erosion touching shore. And I'm going to read one of Frank's poems from his last collection, Last Confession. Learning to Dance. Keep finding shadows getting in the way of the words for me. Learning to dance. My older sister taught me how to dance in the basement. stack of 45s by the record player. At first, no music. My right hand in her left hand on her shoulder, her right on my waist. She counted the steps. Slowly, then faster, faster till she dropped the needle on tequila. By week's end, I took the lead, unwound her from my left hand, passed her behind my back, caught her with my right, twirled her twice and dipped her, then began again. At the hop, rockin' robin, goodness gracious, great balls of fire. No one taught me how to slow dance. I spied on my sister and her girlfriends, dancing with one another, making fun of how the guys moved clumsily as they tried to get close. I would be cooler, use my turn, my spins, and if the lights were low enough and I had just a little luck, in the still of the night, I might dip in on a kiss. I'm sorry, to a kiss. Maxine Scates is next.
Cecelia and I arrived the same year, and the tiered thing in our living room was really something. What color was the shag carpet? Green. Yeah. I also remember that we used to read in the house on Monroe Street. Martina would. Am I getting some?
Microphone.
Is it not on? Oh, I gotta get closer. Okay, I think Martina was under 2 at that point, and she would often contribute from the next room, and then be kind of hustled away. But one of the looking back on it, and you're never totally aware of it at the time. I was a really, really, really shy person at that point. Not that I'm overwhelmingly less so at this point, but then I was wordless, and so I remember sitting in workshop hardly saying a word, basically. Whether it was terror or lack of words, I don't know. But I have a fond memory of hearing Ralph read Williams for the first time. It was one of the Bruegel poems, and it's in that, talk about that music. That music was there, and the pure pleasure that he gave us as he experienced the music and read the poem was quite wonderful. But when I look back at how I intersect with his work, because it was so silent, I wanted to find out things, so I read. This book, Grapefruit, which is his first book of poems, I think, was not that long out, and when I reread it, thinking about what I want, which poems I might like to read today, I realized how much over the years and throughout his work, I appreciated his pacifism. And the war that we were emerging from in 1973 was Vietnam, but the shadow of the war over many of us was World War II and the atomic bomb. And so I think that I was really drawn to this poem called 19. Now, 19 would have been in 1945, when Ralph, as I understand his biography, he had trained to be an airman or to be a bomber in World War II, but he never actually went. And then when Korea came around, he refused to go. So this poem is called 19. And the other thing is, growing up in the shadow of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, I don't think I'd ever, at this point in my life, I was 23, I was a couple of years older, Took me longer to get through undergraduate. I flunked out. I don't think I'd ever read a poem before that talked about the bomb. And so this is Ralph's poem, 19. Tell me it's screwed into my head, machinery as intricate as that screwed into an atomic bomb. Call it a soul. Tell me it's pale tan, like the book I am looking at. And here's a number upside down in orange, 61, reading 19. As easy as turning gray waves blurred a somersault into De Leon's pond. Call it the fish whose fins swim the brown southern hemisphere of my cup. The upper fin, a skeleton webbed with brown water. The lower, a lettuce leaf, a sardine wears to a Sargasso Eden of caviar, cocktails, and mints. Tell me my poems are pieces of it, not scattered, just not put together yet, and that I will not die, only become the perfervid half of an I am. Its chain reaction, blooming over haiku-hollowed Hiroshima. No mushroom or cauliflower, but a multifoliate rose beside cherry blossoms, form quick as blisters or anti-aircraft burst. Our closed couplet, maybe, completing someone's sonnet. Maybe the last of a sonnet series, 61, its title. As orange as the sun at sunset or dawn, or seen as someone somersaulting through sky sees earth, 19. I thought this was a wonderful poem of consciousness, of coming to consciousness. And a later poem, the shorter poem here, or later in the book, is another poem of consciousness. And my other intersection with Ralph is class. The thing about the pacifism was that I come from a working class background. My father was a vet. All my uncles were World War II vets. My father was a deeply disturbed and before he went to war and ruined after he went to war. And I loved Ralph's alternate version of possibilities. I really hadn't experienced that because I didn't know a lot of men who had refused to go to war. You know, it was a really interesting perspective for me. But this poem, An Awakening, is about leaving and about wanting more, which is what brought me to an MFA program in 1973. An awakening. My wristwatch orbits a dead, dark sun, my head, and by a certain glowing, I know what time it is, but not what dream exploded me into day after day after day of wrenched muscles, dust in the lungs, and sleep that would not come, though wings of World War II planes hung from the shadowy ceiling, whispering a prayer for me, and promised dreams gleaming like my rich uncle's parlor floor. I think of my father, for whom a farm and a family tended seemed enough. I think of his sleep and of dreams I might have disturbed, moving over fragile floors to tick off those moments whose glow may briefly outlast the sun's whispering through a telescope shaped like my uncle's ear trumpet, that this is the time. I'm going to read a short and recent poem. I have a long and recent poem too, but I'm going to read a short and recent poem. But I'll tell you, the long and recent poem is called Gaslighting, so you'll take the message on that one. This is called Fairy. I don't know why, but I keep thinking of the photo where my friend stands, so young, holding her daughter, a year or so old, all sleeping weight. My friend's arm encircling her child, her other arm raised, hand cradling her head. I don't know why, unless it's summer, then as now, the crickets singing chorus after chorus each night, and I'm still standing on the riverbank where the ferry crossed, is crossing still, and will arrive on the other side. And won't the time of the would-be dictator be over then? Won't language learn to love itself and us again because it knows more than we know, wants more than we want? Listening as it does to those ghosts we'd ask to carry us through these struck dumb days. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Kim. Kim Stafford.
Maxine Scates. Thanks, Maxine. One thing I love about Tsunami is poetry is tucked away, but elevated, beside the piano. And it's a large section, especially when you realize they're all slender volumes. It's a lot of poetry, so thank you, Scott and Tsunami Books, for having us. I've just been thinking, as people talk, I think Ralph taught amplitude and distillation.
Yeah.
You know, this kind of ebb and flood of words. What more could you say? What about adding this? And then, okay, let's find those 30 words in the middle and make something out of that. So we all learned from that. So I'm going to read one Ralph poem and one of my own. Ralph's poem, circling back to the poem Joan read. This is called Around the Sun, the Alaskan Oil Spill. Space capsule-shaped globules of oil re-entering the atmosphere in the nostrils of terns, an ocean of air between words furthest surges and home. I say a tern may return, eons from its final breath, and smother some other creature. And I say my cells may return, eons from poems, which say each turn is sacred, its flesh to become new life, to go on sustaining lives, which say that oil, formed from the dead, is sacred, not to be wasted or used to gratify greed, which say, with all the breath a mind can hold, each moment of life is sacred, and timelessness and death. And then I took a poetry workshop with Ralph years after graduating. I was in the MFA program, though I wasn't in the MFA program, but I hung out. And Ralph was doing a workshop, I'm trying to remember, maybe at a school, Poet in the Schools thing, and he suggested to the students that they come up with a pen name. And he suggested Rusted Potato might be useful as a pen name. So this is called Rusted Potato. If you have a hard time starting a poem, our teacher said, give yourself a pen name and write it on your page, like Rusted Potato. Rusted Potato can write anything without fear of judgment, can write in any form, in any style, for any length. I took my teacher's advice, and Rusted Potato has spoken with my pen ever since. Now my teacher has passed on, leaving me with this contraption, freedom, this invisibility cloak, this time machine, this kinship with pens, keys, doors, and potatoes that wait with all their eyes open, then speak the story I must write. The next poet is Mark Thalman.
It's great to be back here at Tsunami, because the last time I was here I gave a reading with Ralph. Okay? Yeah. Here is a writing tip from Ralph. Write out of impassioned love or impassioned hate. And if some understanding comes through, so much the better. Another tip he gave me in conference was action is metaphor, which I'd never heard of before. His example was, he kissed her so hard that her hat fell off. Ralph was great at telling stories. I never knew what he was going to say next. One piece of wisdom was always wash your hands after petting a deer in the forest. He told me, you don't know if the deer has been in poison oak. If you forget and go to the bathroom, later on you may feel an itching and burning sensation like you got gonorrhea. Ralph was a great role model, not only as a writer, but as a person. I learned from Ralph that longevity is everything. He kept writing and publishing new work every year. One of my favorite poems of his is Some Incidences, World War II. Awakened by my mom, 16, I'd clutch Dad's gun because he'd be on his way to where Granny'd got sick and the Army'd got my brother, and maybe it would be our hens squawking in the clutch of black marketeers. Or I'd smell our tractor's gasoline pouring into cans to be sold to the big city owners of big cars. I'd shoot and footfalls would flee, leaving whatever was too heavy to carry rapidly away. War and deaths of some friends and everything too heavy 2 years ahead. For a few moments of a few terrifying nights, I tried to be all that I needed to be to stay alive. And another favorite poem of mine of his is called Among, and he won the second place award for this poem from Northwest Review. Among, the next thing you know, you're a nail. Sweden, I mean, you are Sweden. The painting, the house, the hand of Christ may fall. Sweden, its blouses, its beaches, its snowy reaches will not ever rust. You can eat your toast, you can pay your taxes. The fact is, your finger is already mapping a beer or a girl for invasion, and I am a hammer, rot, and oxide among the needles of Norway pine in Sweden. And I'm going to read a new poem of mine, which Ingrid told me that she thought that Ralph would really like. And it's called Accidental Coincidences. And it's got an epigram. There are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. Albert Einstein. I consider it a miracle that we're all here together in the same time and in the same place. Considering all the things that have happened or didn't happen to all of our ancestors for the last 300,000 years. If my father had not fumbled the handoff from his father when they were building a stone wall, I would not have been born. The doctors wanted to wait to operate until he stopped growing, as not to stunt the foot's growth. When Dad was drafted during World War II, He couldn't finish the 10-mile hikes because his big toe wouldn't bend due to the calcium deposits solidified like concrete. My father was given an honorable discharge and entered the university, a paradise. Women outnumbered men 6-1. On their first date, my parents attended a dance. Halfway through the evening, Dad said he'd be right back. That's when he walked on stage and pre-arranged with the drummer, a longtime friend, switched places and played In the Mood. They only wanted 2 children. If my mother had not had a miscarriage before having my sister, there would not be any to be or not to be for me. If I hadn't married the wrong person who turned out to be a covert narcissist, I would not have gotten a divorce, moved to another city, and met my second wife. When she walked into the staff lounge, we struck up a meaningful conversation about poetry and art. It's no wonder that the ancient Greeks believe in fate. Turn left, and she turns right, and the encounter evaporates into oblivion. Never to find out we share the same birthday, enjoy solving murder mysteries, and love the French Impressionists. Now, after 35 years of marriage, I wake up to this happy accident that is us, and together we have another day on this earth.
Thanks so much, Mark. Thank you for all the readings and the memories all of you have been sharing so far. It's such a joy to hear them, and for you to piece in some of Ralph's stories and some of his own history and the ways that you've learned from him and all of it. It's beautiful. Thank you so much. I want to say a few things that I neglected to say during my introduction, is that this robe here, this beautiful piece of fabric, comes from India. Ralph brought it home when he did a tour of 5 different cities under the United States USIS program, which sent artists and writers to different countries on tours. And say what we will about those services in the cultural attaché department of the United States embassies in different countries, they're not all spies. There are some really wonderful people who care about art and share the art from the United States with their people. And he was taken on a tour of 5 different cities in India and came home with this robe because at his final reading, and I forget which city it was in, they presented him with this. And it's called a poet's robe, and they draped it around his shoulders as in respect, as a token of their respect and value of his contribution to the world and to their lives. Mark was talking about the genetic, and I love this poem, the genetic chances of our being who we are now, and all the different chances that make us who we are now. And that's one of the things that's in Ralph's work a lot, when you look at it as a whole. Just the War in the Genes is the title of one of his books. Just the genetic coincidences and all the things that make a cell phone possible. He has a poem in which he gets a phone call from his 2-year-old daughter in New York City through a cell phone. And that wouldn't have happened if generations of dinosaurs hadn't left their genes. It's the genetic transmission throughout centuries of how oil was produced and how oil turns into plastic and all these wonderful coincidences. Also, one of you has mentioned the shots around Ralph's feet. I've forgotten who said that. Was that, anyway, Martina. And one of the biographical facts that Ralph used to say about himself was he was a survivor of cancer, of open heart surgery, of World War II bomber training, and as a childhood of near starvation, whose alcoholic father gave Ralph one of his earliest memories, which was getting drunk one night, and Ralph went to defend his mother against his father, who was threatening her with a pistol, and shot around Ralph's feet and made holes in the floor. And that was an enduring and a powerful memory that gave him nightmares even when we were together. The flip side of that is his father was also a banjo singer and a balladeer, and would entertain, and a storyteller, and would entertain his children at night on his good days, which were many. And he would sit and close them in tobacco smoke, because he smoked a pipe, and tell stories and sing ballads. In fact, his father worked his way from Kentucky to Iowa, singing and playing the banjo in bars, and earning his way up to Iowa, where he became a farmhand on the farm where Ralph's mother, she was not born, but the farm was owned by her father. His mother was born in town, but her father owned the farm, and Ralph's father became a farmhand, and the rest is history. As Ralph's student, and I was, one of the first things that struck me when I saw him walking up, I saw him, first time I saw him, although he had accepted my application to graduate school with a letter that began, "Dear Ingrid Wendt, I like your poems." I later learned that he wrote that to every student when he accepted their work, but that meant a lot. But the first time I actually saw him in person, I was not at his office or in class. I saw him walking into a faculty meeting with other faculties, and somebody says, that's Ralph Salisbury, and I thought, oh my God, I better stay away. And I tried. And here I am, so fortunate to have had 48 years with him. But as his student, I remember what he did in workshops, and several of you have talked about that, his workshops. And one of the things he did too that I learned from when I became a teacher was when a student's poem is being discussed, he would have it read twice aloud. Don't know if that was with all of you, but he would have it read twice aloud. First by somebody else, so that the poet could hear how it's coming across in somebody else's voice. And then the poet was allowed to read the poem. So students heard the poems twice. I used that. That was very useful, very helpful. Yeah, I think I'll go on and read some poems. Also, what was just totally amazing was that I had 48 years of his being my first listener to every poem I ever wrote. And always listening with encouragement. Always offering encouragement. This is also from his first book of poems because it shows a playfulness that isn't always in his later work. And it's written for his son Jeff and for his late brother Brian. Ralph's second son Brian died a few years ago. And it's titled "Come Near the Western Edge," meaning I have come near the western edge. I try a last myth for the childhood of my sons, and you will hear Spencer's Butte in this poem. The giant is eating the mountain, I tell my children while eating cereal with them. A gray mustache is working slowly down the last green slope before ours. It is a very large mountain and mostly granite. It is very hard. It is much harder than limestone, which was formed from small shellfish under the sea in Iowa. Our old home under Iowa? Yes, once upon a time an ocean ate little Iowa. Back when there was Indians? Oh, my sons, it was not the ocean that ate the Indians. And it was not medicine men who made the ocean leave. Before I was a baby, before Iowa was a part of the United States or even a state of mind in a settler, before man, before words became language, long before Hiroshima dissolved like sugar in your cereal. Huh? Oh, my neighbors, I whisper, because I fear huge ears and the tongue that may crush me and my two sons. Oh, my neighbors, beyond the gray mustache, through which a dying father speaks. Oh, my neighbors, the giant is eating very slowly now. The mountain is hard. It is not easy eating. It must be difficult to live with an appetite huge as a cloud. Live well, my neighbors, living still, where all will be green a little longer. Man was made to eat. A little conversation is said to help digestion. Laugh. To end with a reassuringly familiar phrase, make, and I am serious about this, make a good meal. Elephant Shoes, from the book War in the Genes. And it's in memory of Earl Burney, whom Barbara mentioned, a Canadian poet who had a tremendous influence on Ralph. He was invited to be a guest professor at the University of Oregon when Ralph was a very young professor, and they were good friends. Elephant Shoes. Sorry, it's a bit long, but I hope I won't take too much time. A good fight inviting as a good road invites a man. Knuckles beginning to tingle may, like his country, try a little travel. But I remember army armored cars scattered like meteors torn off stars. Love, traditional poetry's rose petals, tent pitched, ditched, and staked against storm. Bare beauty swims science's lava up mountain, eager to be mine in my mind. But on reaching snow-quilted summit dives to center the earth, and I, afar from idealizing man, I abide in a rented house, work 40 hours a week for someone I dislike, like many of you, and picnic in our public wishes, resenting your noise as you do mine. But when you shamble over to offer the use of the fire you have made for hot dogs, or one of those obscure metaphors about weather nobody ever understands, I feel like crying. So long our kids would have a Salt Lake to sail newsprint ships, the Hiroshima, the Nagasaki half across. And if I do not cry, not daring to risk melting the ice, all of us skate toward eventual summer. Forgive me for being no better than you. A poet who will stumble and fall over a final syllable, though living for good moments, which sometimes seem oftener and longer, sometimes not. Forgive me this early morning verse. And he did get up every morning at 5 or earlier to write all the years of his life. Forgive me this early morning verse, sputtering like a power mower almost out of gas below your bedroom window, when you were maybe in the best dream of your whole life so far, or loving your wife, or feeling your own poem scampering into its den ahead of the alarm clock's steel-edged bicuspids and the god-awful elephant shoes of the usual things that you have to do. And one more of mine, it's short. I was going to read a long one about the 3 days and 4 nights that Martina and I were privileged to have Ralph with us at home after his death in the hospital. Jeff and Connor helped us with keeping the room cool, and Barbara came. Other friends came. We had visitors, brought wine, flowers, conversation, and it was sacred, and I will always feel grateful for that. But before I wrote about that, this is a poem written about having to close up our beach house, which we had agreed to sell a year before he died. We had a beach house in Seal Rock. And we closed it up, and after he sold it just before he died, I had to close it up and empty it. And there was an event at the very end. As I locked the door, I saw something that seemed like a message from the spirit world, and I still think it was. And it's titled Magic. And if you like figuring out what form a poem is in, this is in terza rima, because I needed some kind of form to rein in the overwhelm of feeling. Magic. That point where the plane with a loved one inside is still in sight. Unthinkable speck. Star that blinks into blue and is gone. Oh, I'm starting out with a metaphor about a frigate bird and how magical it seems. Start over. The plane, that point where the plane with a loved one inside is still in sight. Unthinkable speck. Star that blinks into blue and is gone. Nearly that high the frigate bird coasts over sea and shore on endless thermals, landing only to nest. Magic, you said the first time we saw it. Our private word for such unexpected wonder. No matter that when we looked the bird up in a book, we found its habits indelicate. No, that first moment of seeing endures, a burst of beauty that blessed our day. And so it was a year ago this month, with the earth's axis tilted and me off balance, souled, emptied, our souls retreat at the beach, and you, less than a month, become ash. Folded my heart, swept the cabin, and ready for new owners. Stepping outside to lock the door, suddenly magic joined at the stem. 2 perfect, bright red autumn leaves on the floor of the deck. Leaves I couldn't identify. Everything else nearby was green. Ay, mi amor. Thank you. And the next and last reader is Ken Zimmerman. And Ken, you will forgive Martina and others for starting to open the Prosecco, because after your reading is going to be our toast. So please remember to stay seated, and we will have cake after the toast. And here comes Ken Zimmerman. Yeah, that might be a good time. Because, yeah, Ken is going to read, but he's also a musician. And he's going to play one of his songs for us after he reads the poems. So you're going to have a double treat here. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. It's such an honor to be part of this distinguished company of poets. I'm overwhelmed, and I want to thank Ingrid for inviting me and for organizing this, and of course Tsunami as well for doing it all. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for Ralph. I'd be somewhere else, but I would not be here. Hard to tell the story quickly, but I showed up in Ralph's office with my 1-year-old son in my backpack, sleeping, luckily, and a sort of vague idea of what I wanted to do next in my life, which was to write. And I thought the best thing would be to take a fiction class, which I had never studied. So I was sent down the hall to Ralph's office and showed up with my kid in the backpack, and I said, oh, I want to take a fiction class because I'll become the great American novelist or something. And I ended up talking to Ralph for an hour or more. Luckily, my kids slept through the whole thing. It was awesome. And at the end of that hour and a half or whatever it was, Ralph changed my life with 4 words. He said, here's what you'll do. And he said, oh, you can sign up for my undergraduate. You can take my undergraduate fiction, but sign up for my graduate poetry workshop, because I already did have a bachelor's. And you won't be wasting your money, and you'll get a good thing. And stick around, and then we'll get you a GTF. And all that led to my career and basically my whole life. So I can't ever thank Ralph enough for that. I've got, I'll do 2 poems of his. And they're kind of thematically linked, I think, with what some others have said. This one is called "The U.S. Bombs a Hospital for the Mentally Ill while Invading Grenada, which Spain originally took from the Indians." I have to do this too. Pilots assigned to take care of the sound of mind administered shock treatments to the insane, and planes, like gulls, their nesting done, were lighter returning to sea. From which, like our out-of-season hurricanes, manifest destiny's weaponry came for centuries. It came again, as incendiary angels descended, not from cathedrals carved heights, but from the USA, imposing military history on natives already as civilized and Christianized as explosion and sperm could make them. Indian genes, islands, invaders' blood flooding my veins and earth. And this one, which ends a little happier. Old German woman, some wars. And in this one he invokes the idea of being a bomber pilot and what that might have meant. Help me, she cries, faltering, reckless or trusting from tram, a survivor of bombs, most likely, and now a flesh and blood bomb herself, the only possible target, me. I'm old, she's older, and I've no time to accuse Coventry's rubble or her the name of a map coordinate I'd flown to set aflame. Her hand finds the hand I've offered. Her feet meet the cold, cobblestoned earth we share with thousands of the living, and with those billions who waltz in petal gowns or snail-shelled helmeted march. Her thanks, an echo of mine. War ending, my bomber turning away from the city, my fate to live, to write, to be ignored or read by all I would love to save. And I'll tell a short poem of my own, a kind of recent poem, and turns out this was in the wonderful anthology that Joan Dobbie just showed up with earlier, and thank you all for doing that, yeah. They are for sale here right now, I think, yeah. So this one's called Along the North Fork, and since you're an audience of poets, I'll mention that it's written somewhat in William Carlos Williams' triadic line. It's called Along the North Fork. I could easily spend another lifetime here, just watching those ouzels dip and dive into the flow of water rushing over this little rapid, and how they hop back up onto mossy rocks and shake their feathers dry, and the way wind nudges the high branches of maples, the high branches and leaves of maples across the creek, and how the folds of hills disappear down valley into misty distances, all exactly like nothing but themselves, without a human word in my mind, as I have already spent so much of this one, if I had another lifetime to spend. Thank you, thanks for being here. I think there's wine and stuff coming around. Yep. Stick around. And I will play for y'all one of my shortest songs. This was written in honor of a friend of mine, Andy Morgenstern, who passed away quite a few years ago now. Smoke rises across the valley in the gray dawn, and the fire's warming, and the coffee's on, and the phone rings, and a shaking voice whispers that you're gone. Smoke rises, disappearing into the air. Smoke rises till you can't even tell that it's there anymore. That ends our program, doesn't it?
Oh, but could you play more? Because there's closing things up.
Okay, now talk among yourselves. I'll play a little bit.
I got another idea. I just realized there are other students of Ralph's in the audience. There are other students of Ralph's in the audience. I just discovered. Here's Ron Johnson from Portland. Would you stand up, please, Ron? Ron Johnson, another of Ralph's students. Who else? Stand up, please. Stand up, please, and tell us who you are. Who else is Ralph's student? John Woody? You want to stand up? Would you? Deb Casey? Yes. Okay, who else? Who else do we have here that I haven't recognized? It's wonderful. Thank you for coming. It's good to see you. We're continuing to pass out Prosecco and sparkling water. You have a choice.
Ken, if you wouldn't mind. Ken, by the way, is part of a group. Can you tell us about your group and what you do? Would you do that?
Okay.
Yeah. And you have Ken has a CD for sale too.
Oh, I didn't bring these.
Oh, you did?
But talk to me. I'm part of a trio called Cross Current, and we really try to emphasize that music writing, all of that has conscience, and it's so important that I think artists, with all the other, what should I call them, light workers, people who really are trying to make a better world. So I'll play a song right now that was written really to honor the people who do the hard work. And in this song, the metaphor for doing hard work is called back to the wheel, putting your back to the wheel when it's stuck real good. And how's it go? I've been what I've been, and I've seen what I've seen, and I've learned how to feel what I feel. And I've known the side streets, the broken heart dreams. Now I'm putting my back to the wheel. I'm putting my back to the wheel. I see nameless war, I see nameless poor, and greed that takes all it can steal. And I can't sit here silent, hide my head at the bar, so I'm putting my back to the wheel. I'm putting my back to the wheel. And if you can't help me, well, I understand. I'll just keep pushing along. But if you stand beside me and we join our hands, we can roll away the stone. We can roll away the stone. Now I don't know how much time I have left me. No one who climbs sees the top of their hill. But I can't watch murder and theft and feel free. So I'm putting my back to the wheel. I'm putting my back to the wheel. I'm putting my back to the wheel. I'm putting my back to the wheel.
We gonna have a toast here?
I think so, yeah. That's what I'm hoping.
Wow.
Ken, do you need a glass of water or wine?
Wine is...
Yeah, wine. There's gonna be a few extra port wines. So, if you need a second glass of some of those students. Was this Ralph's favorite?
Prosecco, yes.
Prosecco?
Well, the beer, really. Beer, really.
Okay, really good.
It's really, pretend it's beer.
Oh, this is like beer?
Whatever.
Yeah, Ralph. You're a friend to us all, we really appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you. And happy birthday to Ralph.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Ralph.